Dear fellow citizens from overseas, mainland France and foreign countries, my dear friends, we have arrived at the final stretch, hardly 3 weeks before the first great confrontation in this election, which will be so decisive for our country. We belong to those who continue to move forwards despite attacks, because we know what we fight for, just as a river flowing to the sea, just as the majestic Garonne River flows through your beautiful city to reach its estuary. We recall this quote of General de Gaulle when on the radio of Londres on April 20th, 1943, he urged our people, who were about to face great battles, to rebuild the edifice of his future. It is by flowing towards the sea that the river stays faithful to her spring. This quote is an incitement to keep going forward without forgetting where we come from. It is here in Bordeaux, in this region, where nature and admirable landscapes remind us of our ancient tradition, where the proudly aligned vineyards form a work of art, and more than that, a French art de vivre, that I will talk to you about France. I will talk to you about France, of this vision of man and the world on which our project is based, and which so radically separates us from our opponents. We believe in France and its special genius. We believe that nothing is written and that the course of history can be changed by the will of men, and in our case, by the will of the French people. We believe in the primacy of politics over economy. We believe that no real political rupture is possible without destroying the current dogmas. Politics, in its noble form, is the art of defining ultimate goals, like making people happy, making them safe, making France a great power, giving the power back to the French people, defending our national identity. In a country tormented by a deep crisis of identity and security, by a widening economic and social crisis that had lasted for 30 years, in a country eaten away by doubt and the lack of a great collective project, this presidential debate stands at a very different level. Today, I would like to address all these questions by speaking especially to the young people of France. Savage globalization is a dispossession as well as a dangerous aberration. Savage globalization is a process that has gone out of control and has become completely unreasonable. It destroys the people and crushes individuals. In this globalizing process, which puts commercial interests above everything else, the promise of unlimited consumption, in other words, unreasonable and absurd consumption, prepares the extinction of species, soil depletion, and the destruction of ecosystems, starting with the human ecosystems that's constituted by nation. The project that I defend in this election is based on what I call the revolution of proximity. We defend the only real ecological project which consists in doing everything necessary through fiscal policy, regulation and social policy to produce as much as possible in France of what we consume in France. We are also experiencing a technological revolution through robotization and Uberization, which of course opens new perspectives but also creates new problems, especially because it produces economic insecurity. We will establish new regulations which will allow us to link employment with purchasing power, which will reconcile environmental protection and with the protection of our way of life, with economic growth and progress. I will create a junior minister for economic transformations so that the state can adapt swiftly to the evolutions induced by the digital revolution. The revolution of proximity is also the answer to a democratic problem. We want to implement in our democratic life great political innovations, making one's voice heard, being able to express oneself, giving one's opinion, enabling everyone to play a role in our collective fate and in his or her own fate. We will create a democracy of proximity in which each voice will be taken into consideration. Now I can hear you well.
Là, on vous entend bien.
Yes, I can hear you very well, and we will hear you even better once I have instated referendum. Referendums triggered by the President, of course, I will do that. I planned several referendums, and I will respect their outcome. And on the initiative of citizens themselves, with you, with 500,000 signatures, you can trigger a referendum, you can ask for a law, or you can ask to suppress a law. But also, my friends, but also thanks to a proportional representation, which will allow to better represent all political tendencies in our national parliament. And this requires proportional representation. I will remove useless and costly administrative strata and only keep 3 administrative strata, the most democratic ones, the ones which are most familiar to the citizens and closest to them: communes, departments, and the states. We are accused of being anti-Europeans, but actually it's the opposite. It is because we are deeply European that we want to revivify the European idea, to revitalize it in its diversity and of its composing nations. These nations form the true Europe, the living Europe, Europe founded in a history made of academic, technological, scientific, political, and human cooperation between nations. The European Union is not Europe. It goes against the diversity constituted by the different nations that make our continent. It goes against national cultural wealth. It weakens them. It suffocates them. It dilutes them. And it is only that after having negotiated thoroughly with the European authorities, and not alone, because other countries are suffering, and they will seize the occasion and will join us around the negotiating table. But after having negotiated, I will ask the French people what they want to do with the European Union. The globalists have created a world void of points of reference, where our children are not only victims, like us, of mass immigration, but they are condemned to become migrants themselves. It is not acceptable that children need to leave their towns to go to school, or to leave their region in order to find a job, or to leave their country to succeed. And let me be clear, I'm not opposed or against travel. To the youth listening to me, I say, go out, enjoy your youth, go and see the world. I propose to establish a form of Erasmus for students in technical and technological sectors in order to give them the opportunity to travel as well abroad as part of their studies. I also propose to create an Erasmus in the Francophone countries with the people with whom we share the 3rd most spoken language in the world. These so very beneficial twinnings, which we ought to maintain from Quebec to Africa, are the source of self-awareness and enrichment. But we want travel to be a desire to discover rather than an obligation to leave one's country, a choice rather than an escape, an option rather than an obligation. Yes, you've understood, my dear friends. I will work to ensure that the French youth can live in France, but also work in their country. In order to enable our youth to finance their projects, in particular to those who seek to create startup companies, I propose to devote 2% of the 1.6 billion euros of life insurance to venture capital and expansion capital. In the field of creation, as well as efficiency, commands us to revitalize non-market logics, that is, to allow creation outside the established circuits, which only care about managing their annuities. I will open TNT TV channels to the most watched TV webs in order to install new places of free speech for popular audiovisual productions. I will establish incubators for artists, which, on the entire territory, will open creative spaces for musicians, painters, sculptors, and even video game makers in order to allow them to launch their career outside what I would call the speculative world of art dealing. I will recognize the principle of digital freedom in order to avoid big financial companies to establish their internet regulation for their own profit. I will replace the Adopi law and replace it by a flat rate, allowing to conciliate liberty and fair competition for artists. It is therefore essential to set in stone the principles of freedom of speech and digital freedom, in including them within the fundamental freedoms as written down in our Constitution and protected. I am the only one speaking about digital sovereignty. My election will end the opposite in data storage and the processing of your personal data. These informations that contain all our lives will have to be stored on servers based on our national territory in France and will allow us to protect also our private lives. I cannot accept for us to lose the battle of information highways because of the current disengagement of the state. We cannot accept to be a digital colony of Google, Facebook, Amazon, and Apple. I will be the President of France, who is an industrial and technological champion, in order to face the new challenges of our time that are robots, artificial intelligence, the revolution of autonomous transportation, biotechnology, the internet, and things of the collaborative economy. I will be the President of France who attracts talents. It is thanks to the French youth that our country will attract the world again. I am well aware of this other anxiety of our youth and will address this through my Protection for Youth Accommodation, a rise of 25% of individual housing assistance for the less than 27-year-olds, and a vast plan to reconstruct student accommodations. Finally, affordable accommodation for you and the end of excesses by housing agencies. The whole thing with just one file that will, I promise you, be as light as Macron's whole program. When these young people eventually enter the labor market, when they know that they will be destined to become house owners in the France of house owners, I want to make it emerge. Helping our youth also implies to really reduce prices for public transportation, and also, as it is almost compulsory requirement for employment, by helping them getting a driver's license and an acceleration of exam dates, because it's become a route to hell. But living well as a young person in 2017 in France also means, like for anyone else, living in total security. At a time when some of us are asking our youth to get accustomed to living with Islamic terrorism, I tell them, never, do not ever get accustomed to it.
Nous mettrons tout en œuvre, absolument tout, pour vous en protéger.
We will do everything and absolutely everything to protect you. Streets, schools, and the whole public space shall no longer remain places where one feels potentially threatened for a look, for a cigarette, a mobile phone, or even sometimes without any reason at all.
Ne peut pas être pour nos jeunes synonyme d'anxiété ou de crainte.
The public space cannot be associated with anxiety and fear for our young people. Young French women and young French men. I want to tell them that I want to enable them to create, to imagine, and to enchant this new world rising before our eyes. I want them to get rid of artificial identities, substitutes of identities which are designed to make them forget who they really are. That is to say, heartfelt French. Our message is so intensely modern and deeply altruistic. Because it advocates a world of diversity, it is universal. Because it offers a high vision of mankind, it's humanist. Because it postulates proximity, it is ecological. And because it makes people's will prevail above all else, it is democratic. And because it defends France and the French people in all circumstances, it is fair and patriotic. It resonates with the global trend of conscious awakening and the assertion of people. It is illuminated by the sun of freedom, rising at the horizon of nations becoming sovereign again. We invite all the French, and especially the young, to take this beautiful idea up again. That of those who have preceded them, to make them who they are, that of their nation, the French nation. Like Chateaubriand before us, we sing the love of our country, which is filling our hearts. Oh, sweet memories of the beautiful place of my birth. My sister, how beautiful they were. Oh, France. Oh, my country, be my love, forever. This ideal places contemporary people at the meeting point of two attachments, at the intersection of two filiations. That which links them with both past and future, which gives them his or her place between his and her parents and his children. That which links him today with his fellow countrymen by a bond of affection, and therefore solidarity. Filiation and the sense of belonging, solidarity and shared destiny, all those fraternal confluences which can unite all the French people regardless of their background, as long as they are French in their hearts. We cannot retreat. After winning this election, we will confront globalization with you, my friends, but also with all the French people. We will not face it disunited by individualism, nor divided by secularism. We will face globalization together, united by our revived interest and revived awareness of national and reductible sense of belonging to the same people, but also united by our values and the imperious need to overcome. What we call for is nothing else than the feeling every single French person cherishes within, love of our country. I know you will seize this historical opportunity. Here in Bordeaux, you are at the vanguard of this rising trend. The time has come. Forward to victory. Long live the French people, long live the Republic, and long live France.